She never had to speak it aloud. Her silence said everything. At first, I brushed it off, blaming stress or shifting moods. Maybe I was just imagining things. Maybe I was reading too deeply into the long pauses, the way her gaze drifted past me instead of meeting mine, or how her words had begun to carry a sharper edge. I convinced myself it was just a rough patch, the kind every couple stumbles through. I clung to the belief that it would pass, that things would settle back into what they once were. But little by little, the closeness between us faded into something distant, something unfamiliar. It seeped into the small moments. Shrugs instead of hugs. Replies stripped of interest. Eyes that didn't stay. When I asked about her day, she'd respond with a flat, "Fine." Just one word, but it slammed the door on any further conversation. My texts were increasingly ignored, or worse, brushed off with cold, clipped replies. She started disappearing for long stretches, no reasons given. And when I asked, her answers came in fragments, pieces that didn't form any whole. I told myself she was exhausted. I gave her room to breathe, thinking love and patience could pull us through. But that space widened into distance. Distance thickened into silence. And silence hollowed out everything love used to fill. I remember the day it all cracked open. Nothing special. Just a normal weekday. I left work early, not with flowers, not with some grand idea, but simply to be present, to close the growing distance. I walked through the door, hopeful, maybe even a little nervous. But she didn't even look up. No smile, no flicker of warmth, just an irritated glance, like my arrival had interrupted something more important. She didn't even move from her spot. Just stared at her phone and said flatly, "What do you want?" Those words hit harder than a scream. I stood there, stunned, heart racing, fumbling for a response. Then she looked at me, really looked at me, and what came next froze the air between us. "You don't matter to me. Stop pretending like this means anything." In that moment, everything I had been holding on to fell apart. I had poured everything into us, twisted myself into knots to keep this thing alive. And in one breath, she dismissed it all, dismissed me, like I had been an inconvenience from the start. I wanted to ask why. I wanted to fight for us. I wanted her to care again. But something inside me cracked. And in that quiet fracture, I finally saw the truth I had been too afraid to face. So I let go. I stopped sending the first message. I stopped asking to spend time together. I stopped studying her face for glimpses of the person I once knew. I stopped offering love where it was treated like a burden. I went silent, not from anger, but from clarity. At first, the quiet hurt. The silence in the house was loud in its own way. Dinner felt heavy, filled with everything unsaid. Nights stretched long and empty. But over time, something surprising happened. I found calm. In the stillness, I began to feel again. I reconnected with friends I had slowly drifted from. I picked up old hobbies that had withered under the weight of a failing relationship. I started going to the gym, not to win her attention, but to rebuild a sense of strength in myself. I wasn't seeking validation anymore. I was rediscovering my reflection. And people noticed. They asked what had changed. But I couldn't explain it, not the slow unraveling, not how it feels to love someone who stops seeing you. And I didn't need to explain. I had finally stopped needing her permission to feel whole. Then, one evening, she returned. Not dramatically. Quietly. Like someone who'd suddenly realized they'd lost something that once mattered. Her voice was softer than I remembered. She said she missed me. Missed us. Asked if we could start over. There was no apology. Just a hesitant vulnerability in her eyes. But I no longer felt the pull. I wasn't angry. I wasn't hurt. I had simply moved on. I told her I had changed, that I couldn't go back to the version of myself who waited around for scraps of affection. That man was gone. She left that night. Maybe she never fully understood what she let go. But I did. I had lost someone who made me feel invisible. And in her absence, I found someone far more important, myself. There was no fiery ending. No shouting, no slammed doors. Just a slow, steady rise from the ashes. I rebuilt, not for her, but for me. I stopped shrinking to fit someone else's idea of love and began becoming the version of myself I had forgotten existed. And if there's one thing this journey has taught me, it's this. Never let someone's indifference convince you that you're unworthy. Your worth is not determined by those who walk away. It's proven by how you choose to stand when no one is left to applaud you. So if you're feeling overlooked, unloved, or abandoned, hear this. You do not have to stay where you are not cherished. Let go. Choose yourself. Because that's where everything begins to change. That's where you begin.